Hello and welcome back to an ever sunny, ever wonderful London, and I would like to talk in N=34 about how in MvvmCross you can show a progress dialog or a waiting dialog. And what I've done just to set this up is I have set up a project. It's just a normal setup. It's got a core, a droid, a phone and a touch, and it's just, you know, the basics to save us going through the same NuGet setup. So let's dive into this project, and in the first view model I'm going to rip out hello, and what I'm going to do, actually no, I'll leave hello in there, I don't mind. And what I'm going to do is in the constructor for this I'm just going to set up a little timer, and this timer is going to be a new system.threading.timer, and this timer is just here for me to do some pretend network stuff, because that's really what we're about at the moment. We're about, you know, how to show progress when you're downloading from the network, or perhaps doing something else that's resource or time intensive, but downloading from the network is by far the most common. So I'm going to have this tick every second, and when it ticks it'll get called an on tick, and I will just add this underscore timer as a private field. Adds it in the wrong place, but there we are. So that's my tick, and now what I'd like to do is I would like to have another property here, which is going to be bool underscore, and this will be isBusy, and that should be okay. And then I would like to have an I command, so let's just do that. A public I command, oops, public spelt wrong. Public I command, and that's going to be a fetch command, and this is going to be get return new mvx command. And what we're going to do when we get this fetch is if we're busy, then return, because we don't want two of these going on at the same time. Otherwise we'll do is busy equals true. And what we'll do is we'll just set a date time. That should do it. Private date time underscore when to finish. And what we will do is we'll initialize that to, you know, sometime. I guess we could initialize it to date time 0 to start with. Actually, we could just do it with a nullable date time. That would do it. So when to finish is going to be null to start with, and what we'll do here is when to finish equals datetime dot utc now dot add seconds, and we'll add on 3 seconds, say. And then all we can do in on tick, what we'll do is if when to finish has value. If we don't have a value, so not in there, we'll just return. We don't need to do anything. Otherwise what we'll do is if datetime.utc now is greater than or equal to when to finish dot value, then all we'll do here is do an isBusy equals false. So all this code does is literally, it's just, you know, it's pretending when we hit fetch command, we'll pretend we do a hit, and 3 seconds later approximately it'll clear that hit for us. So we could also do here isBusy equals false, and we'll also do when to finish equals null, so we clear that timing clip on us. So if we just build that, so what we'd like to do is in the droid project, for example, we would like to have some kind of display when it's doing that. So if we go to the first view for this, then obviously we don't really care so much about the hello, so we could probably just remove it. But what we do want in here is we do want a button, and so this button we can set to Android layout width equals fill parent and height equals wrap content. Wrap, not warp. And we'll put an Android : text on there of fetch. And we would also like to do a binding to that. So we'll do local :mvxbind equals, and we would like to do a binding on that, which is going to be bind the click event to the fetch command. Yeah, we could also do a binding on this to disable it, but for now that will do fine in terms of the fetch command. So that's our basic UI there. And if we run this up, what it should probably do is just so we know we've fetched something, let's also do is busy. So let's also just do a text here. Underneath the button we'll have a text view. And this text view, we will bind the text to is busy. Okay, so if we run this up, then we should, I hope, see that, you know, it's not going to be the most exciting demo in the world, but we should see that when it runs, you know, is busy will get set to true for 3 seconds. So when we hit fetch, you can see just about it's set to true, and then it clears to false. So, you know, that is a, you know, hopefully you can see that. I'll just zoom in. There's the false. You know, it's not the most exciting demo ever. It's not the most dynamic of UIs. Really what you want to do is you want to put a big display up to tell people what's going on. So I'm just going to make that a bit larger so you can see it. Make that 40dp again. And that would be, you know, a very bad indicator really to the user that I'm busy fetching network data, please give me a chance to fetch it. So instead of that, let's just add to some code just here in first view. We could add a bindable progress. So to do that, what you might do is you might do a public class view. Actually, let's just do this using code behind. This is going to be quite an interesting demo. So what we can do is we can do a bindable progress. And this bindable progress, what we'd really like is we would like to have a property on it, just a normal property, bool, and this, you know, we will call visible. And we'll store it as a, the easy way to store this is what we're going to do is we're going to use a dialog. And so let's just do that. We're going to have a private member here, which is going to be a, is there a progress dialog? That's what I want. So we're going to have a progress dialog. And we will say that we are visible if dialog is not equal to null. So we're going to return that. That's just syntax. And then what that means is in the set, what we can do is if value equals visible, then return, because it's just setting the same value, so we don't care about it. Otherwise, what we'll do is if value, so if it's saying please start showing it, then we'll do underscore dialog equals new progress dialog. And for context, okay, so we need to store the context somewhere. So let's just pass that in as our constructor. So constructor will take as its inherited as its argument the context. And we will store that if I can. Yep, so that's going to be our context. And that means we can pass that into our progress dialog. Let's do that. Oops, underscore context. And then what we can do is we can show it. So dialog.show, and I think that might be all we need to do. If we then have the case that we're hiding it, what we can do is underscore dialog dot hide and underscore dialog equals null. So that's a very simple progress dialog we're going to use. What we can do is in bindable progress, if I've got this right, we can actually add one of these as a private member for ourselves. So let's just do it. Private bindable progress underscore bindable progress. And what we're going to do is a bindable progress dot visible we want to bind. So let's just do our normal trick of var set equals this. So when I say normal, actually this is a very normal trick when you're doing iOS. but you've never really seen it done in Android, but you can do the same thing in Android and in Windows as you do in iOS. So we're going to create a binding set from a first view to a first view model, and we'll pull in those two things, and then we can pull in that using that, and then in there we will set.bind, and so we want this bindable progress, so let's do it. So after the set content view, we're going to do a bindable progress equals new bindable progress this, and now we can bind that bindable progress for its visible property. We can bind that to the view models, and I think it was called is busy property, and we can apply that set. So that same syntax you've seen plenty of times in iOS, you can use as well inside the onCreate of the first view. And we should now be able to have a bindable progress. So let's just see whether or not that works, or if I've made a mistake. And we should be able to debug start new. If you wanted to, you could probably put the bindable progress inside the XML as well, but for this it works perfectly well as not doing it. Obviously the bindable progress at this level is being attached to the activity, so each activity would have its own one. So you know, it's not a global level busy. Right, so if we now hit fetch, then what you can see is we get our dialog. It's not giving us any text or anything, it's just telling it's busy, and then when it returns from being busy, it gives you a gives you the view back. So perhaps if you wanted to display some text as well, I bet you can do that inside is it show, or do you have to construct it separately? Let me just see _dialog.caption. So there's all sorts of things here. Set custom title. Okay, I don't want to do that. I just want to set the title, please. Set title, and I'll just set the title to work. So that's a progress view in Android, and you know, it gives you some feedback. So next up, let's try and do the same thing in iOS. Just check it was working still. So there's it is, and now it gives you working. There's also text you can set down here as well, and you can probably change the icon. As you saw, you could use a custom view for it. So that's the bindable progress working in Android. Let's do a similar thing in Touch. So with Touch, we've got a setup here where we've got our first view, and the first view is still bound to hello at the moment with a label. So let's change this around a bit, and let's do a button. And our button is going to be a new UI button, and we want to give it a UI, what's it called, a UI button type dot rounded rect, just to give it one of those standard ones, and then button dot frame equals new rectangle F, and then we also want to set the caption on the button, so set title equals fetch. And we'll do that for normal, and it will cascade down. So we add the button to ourselves, and then the default property on a button is its touch up inside, so we're going to bind that to the fetch command. So that will give us our button, and then our text field we will bind to is busy. It's a bit odd that we're using a text field, but that's okay. So this should, if we just run it, let me set this as the default project. Change to iPhone simulator. Hopefully we've got a connection to the emulator. So if I run this up and I run up my remote desktop, password of Timbuktu, not really. And oh no, there's a mistake I've made somewhere, but I'll come back to that. And I'll come back to that in a moment, but let me just get this set up. If I knew my password, it would really help. If I got caps lock on or something. What's going on? Okay, I'm finally in. So it's still running a previous demo there, which we'll get rid of. But there was a build error, and the build error was just one extra bracket. So hopefully we can run this guy up. and it will run across the network. I can zoom in a little. Yep. Zoom in again. Right, so this will be our UI. Hopefully it's compiling and pushing across. Here we go. And if we hit fetch, then you can see it goes to true, but this is, not telling us that it's really busy at the moment, not giving us any big indicator. So what you can do at the moment is return to false, so it's no longer busy. So what we need to do is we need to add another property to this, which will another component which will allow us to do it. And I've just given the game away. What we're going to do is we're going to add a component. So we're going to use the Xamarin Component Store. And if you load the component store, it's a bit flaky sometimes in terms of stability at the moment, the component store. But if it loads, if it doesn't load, it could be a very short demo. But if it does load, hopefully it's talking to the component store and downloading the information. Oh, it's a very slow web hit. Apologies for this. When it does load, and if it does load, then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a couple of the progress controls that are available. There's one from Big Ted, who is also known as Fast Chicken, and that is a kind of application-wide component control, progress control. But there's another one which is more specifically for a view. So I'm going to search for progress. And hopefully it'll come back with some of these for us. They often are called heads-up controls, these progress controls. I'm not sure it's working for me, this component store. It claims to be doing something. So they're called heads-up controls just because they kind of give you a heads-up over the top of the rest of the controls. It's not like, heads-up on a fighter cockpit or anything. Let me see, is this just dying? Gosh, I don't know if this is actually working because it just seems to be a bit slow at the moment, shall we say. Okay, let me try one more time on that. It's maybe a failed attempt. So it's going to load the component store. If I can't load it, I may have to draw my own component, but I'd much rather reuse something that's already developed and tested if I can. So yeah, there's some problem at the moment here with the component store. It could, I suppose, be blamed on IE10, but I don't think so. I think this is a genuine just server issue at the moment with Xamarin Component Store. Sorry, it's not the most interesting video to watch. Waiting for someone to download a web page. I wish I knew some good jokes to tell at a time like this. Okay, I'm just going to get the first progress control I can find from this store, because obviously it's not working very well and I'd really need it to work to do this demo. I may cut this bit out of the video later, or I may make you sit through it because it's painful for me too. Feel free to fast forward. Really wish I knew some good jokes. Right, so it finally loads, but you can see it's not downloading images and things, so it's not going particularly well. Now, anywhere on here do we actually have a progress control? Okay, so we've got next progress control there. Just want to see if the other one is also here, because the other one will allow me to do it in a similar type way. And I'm thinking, well, let me try this one. I guess I've never actually tried this one, but oops, I may have clicked on it, so I may not have a choice anymore. Right, so it's downloading this one now, and just because of the speed of the server, this may go horribly wrong. When it works, the Xamarin Component Store is very good. Obviously when it doesn't work, it's painful as anything. But hopefully we'll get this progress HUD back from Jonathan George. He's doing something. Even if it's just blocking, it's doing something. Right, so we've got it, and I'm just going to add it to app before it gets a chance to crash or do anything else, because I really just want it to come. And you can see we get this MTMB progress view, and we've got this sample code here. So I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard as well. I do hope it's actually adding to my app. I don't know. Please. I may just be failing here miserably to get this to work. It may be that the component store is just unusable at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't seem to actually be doing anything on that. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt and give it 30 seconds or so and see if it actually doesn't think so. I'll definitely hear that, and then I'll see. I'll pause this and see if anything happens. So all we've managed to do so far is to get a picture downloaded. Let's try again. Now when we hit it, it does something. Phew! And so now we get this downloading progress HUD. And it now has downloaded, so you can see it's added something in there. So what we should be able to do now is if we take that previous code that I copied from the clipboard, let me just put this into a foo method just temporarily. So you can see we've got a progress HUD there, and you can see how you show and hide it. So let's take that, and what I'd like to do is, obviously I don't need view did load. What I'd like to do is I'd like to use that control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another class, and I'll call this Bindable Progress. And what I'm going to do on this is exactly as before. I'm going to have as we did in Android, I'm going to have an MTB progress HUD, and this is called my progress. I'm going to have a property called visible, so public bool visible. And what I'm going to do is, obviously we're going to say it's visible. Let me just get rid of that stray character. We're going to say it's visible if the progress is not null. And then we're also going to say that it's when we set it, if visible equals value, we won't change anything. That's cool. If it is a case that we now need to show our visible, our progress, then what we will do is if value, that means we need to show it, we will do this code here. So progress equals, here we go. Right, so this needs a view as its parent, so we can pass that into the constructor here as well. Private view underscore parent, and that view is obviously a UI view, and we can initialize that from the constructor. That's cool. And so that's going to be our underscore parent. Label text and remove, those look all right as kind of properties, but we just want to set this to underscore progress. And because it's visible, we want to show it, so progress.show. Animated, yeah, let's animate. We always like to animate these things. And then finally, if it's not going to be made visible, we want to hide it. So what we'll do is underscore progress.hide. And with that, again, it's just an animated. We don't want to pass in any delay. We want it to happen. And then we'd really like to do progress equals null. And we know because of the review from SuperView on hide that this will just disappear. So that's a bindable progress. So in theory, let's just see whether this works. We should be able here to have a bindable progress in our class. Let's just do it, bindable progress. And what we'll do is we want to create it here in view did load, so we're going to create it. Underscore bindable progress equals new, and for this we just pass in the parent view, so kind of our own view in our, the whole screen. And then we'd like to bind it. So set bind underscore bindable progress to so it's for its visible property, so let's just add that in for, and this is the bindable progress is b.visible. Oops. And we're binding that to is busy. So now if we run this up, and assuming that I've read how to do the this new component that I've never used before, assuming I've read it correctly, then we should be able to deploy it. Let's see, it's off. Claims to be running it, so let's go over to here and see what happens. So when this runs up, there's nothing we can see that's immediately different, but if we then hit fetch, then we don't see a bindable progress. So that didn't work so well. Let's just see what else we could have done wrong here. We definitely had its bindable progress. There's no trace here that's telling us anything went wrong. We're binding visible. So let's just see. We have this progress. We have it showing. We set it to its parent. That all looks good to me. I can't quite see if there's anything wrong with this. Perhaps the component doesn't work on the component app store. Let's see again. If we hit fetch, then we'll definitely hit this breakpoint. The parent is definitely the whole view. And we're definitely calling show with true. And yet we don't see anything. Okay, so at this stage you start to wonder whether or not the component works. But let's just take a look. If we go to the component and we view its details again, then hopefully it's not going to be too painful. And it tells you that to use this, you just do this type of thing. So you do have to do this. This is the step I missed. View, add subview. So let's just go back to first view. What I had done wrong is I do have to do underscore parent dot add subview of progress underscore progress. So that's the step I missed, and now I think this should work. And let's just see. Obviously you don't have to keep deleting it and adding it, but that's the way I've decided to do it here. And let's see if this works. So it's running up on the simulator. If I now hit fetch, then I get my dialog for a couple of seconds, and then when it disappears, it disappears. So again, you can see it. And so, that's a much better UI to the user about the fact that something's going on. As I say, there are other those styles on the App Store. The one from Fast Chicken, Big Ted, that I've used before, actually works application wide. So if you have a bindable one in each of your sub views, then actually they all end up at one singleton. So be a bit cautious of that, but that is the effect you will sometimes want. You can also animate. Quite often there is a on the app bar itself there is a little thing that comes here, and you quite often want to animate that in iOS. But overall, it's pretty quick and easy, as long as the component store works anyway. It's pretty quick and easy just to add one of those. So that's a bindable progress bar in Touch. Finally, let's just do phone as well, just to complete the set for Windows. So in here, in our first view, we will quickly add. So we've got this. We don't really care so much about the stack panel with the button, so let's do a button, and the content on the button is fetch, and the command on the button we want to bind to that fetch command, so we do binding and fetch command. It looks like a typed command wrong, so I'll go back and do that, and I don't need to add a value converter or anything. Although we could start enabling and disabling these buttons quite straightforwardly. I'll remove this text box, and the text block I'll bind to is busy. And then what we'd like to do is we would like to somehow have an indication of the fact that something is going on. And so to do that in Windows, the easy way to do it is to do an so it's a progress. Where are you? Progress bar. If you do a progress bar and this has got an is indeterminate on it, equals true, I think you may also need to set is enabled on it to true. And then when you've done that, you can actually just bind the visibility, and so we'll bind that to is busy. But we really, because it's a visibility, we need to apply a converter. So we're going to apply a converter, and this will be a standard visibility converter. And to get that working, we can add the NuGet package from MvvmCross for the visibility plugin. And I think that will just add it by default. So where is the visibility plugin? There it is. So let's just add that. And I think if we do that, does it add it by default? No, it probably doesn't. So we still have to register it with. So we probably still have to do a static resource visibility, and then we probably still need to do all of the steps to get a converter into XAML, which means we add a converters folder. In here we add a new class, we'll just call it class 1 and rename it in a moment. And this class is, we want a public class native visibility, and this one is going to inherit from an MVX native value converter, almost there, and this one is MVX visibility value converter. Pull that in. And then we have to do the app.c.xaml. We actually have to add one of these to our resource dictionary. Apologies, this is so long-winded, but it's what you have to do. So a native visibility, pull that in, x:\key equals, and this might be a visibility, I think is the name I used for it. So you can do that. And you could also, you know, actually in the first XAML perhaps bind more than just this guy. What's it saying? Okay, so that's just complaining, but hopefully as soon as we set this up, it'll be fine. Perhaps as well as this progress bar, you could, you know, display it on a whole grid if you wanted to. So, you know, you could display a big rect and bind it as well. Let's just see whether this works. I'm going to set its height just so we can see it. Height is going to be 10, 20, there you go. Width is going to be 400, and just to show it, a foreground equals, and I'll make this something that should show up on the screen, a coral color. Right, so if we build this, let's just see, does it build? And it says build succeeded. It's still complaining a bit in the XAML editor, but that's just in the editor. So if you shut down, oh no, I'm connecting to the wrong simulator. Sorry about this, cancel. Okay, I can't connect to the Windows 8 simulator, so let me just change it to Windows 7. Down it comes, and now we should hopefully be able to run this up. What we should see, I've got the right emulator. Let me try any CPU and see whether it's just a build issue there. So we debug, start new, deploying, launching, and hopefully if we hit fetch, then you can see here the red dots coming through. Yeah, so hopefully you can see it. Let me see if I can zoom in for you. Those dots there are the ones. Let me do it one more time. Those dots. So those dots are there, and hopefully you can see it working. If we wanted to make it a bit more obvious, then we could do a whole screen overlay, and we could do this in all of the platforms as well. It's not just about Windows Phone. Perhaps you'd want to mask the whole display out, and I think you can see how you do that. So you just put in a rectangle, let's just put a rectangle in, and we'll make this one height 400, width 400. Doesn't have indeterminate, doesn't have foreground, does have background. Oh, it has a fill. Fill equals that, and opacity equals, and I'll make this, opacity is a float, so I'll make it 0.5, and I'll make this color white. And actually, let's put this over the whole page. So we'll take the rectangle, and we'll put him over everything. So for this, he needs to have a grid dot column span equals 2. And I think if I remove this, grid dot row span equals 2, then that will actually cover the entire page. So now, you see I need to make sure it goes over the top. It's actually the last thing in the XAML. So now, sorry about how long this has taken, but now we should be able to run this up, and we should hopefully see that when it runs we'll get a white area as well as those red dots, so it'll be even more obvious to the user that we're busy loading at the moment. There you go. So you can see it come through and then fade away. Obviously, again, if you looked at n equals 33, you could work out how to animate that rectangle in and out. It wouldn't take very long to do at all. I hope that gives you a quick overview about how to do these kind of busy displays on all three platforms. So this was called waiting, so let's get down there. So again, just running on Android, it looked like this. Running on iOS, let's pull this over to this side of the screen and pull this over there. Oops, don't snap. And running on Windows Phone in the middle is this. So you can see that if you run on Windows Phone, you get that effect. If you run on Android, you get that effect, and if you run on iOS, then you get, this effect. And it would be easy to combine them, to alter them however you'd want to alter them. All of them running off the same shared code, and I hope that gives you an overview of how to do a waiting display. Cool. Thank you very much for listening. I think that's the end of this one. Apologies for the problems with the display on the component store. I think it's just server issues on Xamarin side.